morning, good afternoon, good evening, lunch break, whenever you're watching this. I'm Ryan at thepacetriathlon.com, and in this video, we're going to jump in talking about rate of perceived exertion, RPE, because this can mean many things to many people, but I'm going to explain how I use it with my athletes. So sit back, relax. If you got any questions, we'll get into that at the end. So let's go. So number one, RPE. The way I use it is a scale used to measure the level of intensity of your exercise, usually measured from 1 to 10. Now, there are several other more formalized and standardized ways of measuring rate of perceived exertion. There's some scales can go from 1 to 20, 1 to 16, all this other stuff. When you get buried in those minutiae of details, I find it kind of hard to communicate with athletes. How did this feel? Well, this felt like a 15, but I don't know. Maybe it felt like 11. When 1 to 10, 1 being super easy, 10 being all out, it cuts down a little bit on the kind of vagueness of where you fall in that scale. And it's like, well, it's a 7.5.62. It's like, no. So you're in the middle, you're in the top, or you're in the bottom. So I try to make it as easy as possible to kind of get into a more easy scale for athletes to be able to determine where they're at in their workout. So and a lot of people use RPE as opposed to either going by heart rate or going by power or anything like that on the bike. It's just a more widely utilized system of keeping track of it was easy, it was hard. It was a 1, it was a 10. Just makes it a little bit more straightforward and simple, especially if you don't have a smart trainer and your workout is done in power. When you hit 75%, then you can kind of correlate that to a 7.5 on the perceived rate of exertion scale. So hopefully that helps you out. Number 2, 0 is nothing at all. Would be sitting in chair. 10 is very, very hard or heavy. And end of an exercise, stress test, very difficult activity. So if you're out there doing an FTP test or something like that, 10 is what you should be aiming for at the end of that stress test. If you're out there doing threshold intervals, you're at 8, 9, or 10. If you're sitting in a chair like I am and just talking, that's a 0 to 1. So to just give you a little bit of context on that scale of 0 to 10. So keep that in mind. Number 3, or it goes to 0 to 5 for brevity. So I've even gone to some athletes, because if you're in zone 5 for power, if you're zone 5 for heart rate, just 1 through 5. 1's easy, 5's hard. Let's make it easy and straightforward. Boom, you go out there and you do it to the level of your exertion that you perceive when you're doing the workout. So keep that in mind too. It just depends. Some coaches are different. I usually use a 0 to 5 just because it correlates to power and heart rate a little bit better. But again, get on the same page if you're working with a coach, if you're doing a training plan, make sure you know what that training plan is done by. So there's tons of different ways to do this. Number 4, realizing RPE for a workout will help athletes recognize feelings about where they are in a race. So if you're doing your training, you're like, well, that was a level 2. And then you get to your race and you're like, this feels like a level 5. So maybe I should back it off to level 3 or something like that. You know, if your target is, kind of a zone 2 for the race, and you feel like you're doing zone 5 to keep a pace or something like that, that gives you a little bit of knowledge to say, hey, maybe I need to back off the effort. This feels a little bit more difficult. But it also goes into if you're out there with you're using bike power and your batteries die or your sensor falls off your bike or something goofy happens out there and you no longer have power, at least you could kind of understand. It's like, okay, in my workout, level 5 was this, level 3 was this, an easier day or a tempo day would felt like this. So this is what I need to go by feeling wise in my ride for my race to make sure I don't ride with outside of my effort levels that I need to do for the race, so I can come off the bike and do a good run, or I'm not going too easy on the bike ride and then I get off the bike and I realize that, hey, it's kind of squandered opportunity maybe to go a little bit quicker on the ride and not really sacrifice much of the ride. So keep that in mind. What you do in training can correlate to what you do in a race. So even if you're using power, you're using heart rate, maybe you also kind of make a mental note, this is what this level feels like. Number 5, don't be ruled by data. Be informed by additional to RPE. So that kind of goes into, don't just do your workouts and data, heart rate, power, this is what it is, and I'm going to disregard how I felt during this workout. If you get to the end of the workout, make a mental note. Even like Trading Peaks has a little thing, you can add RPE or something like that, or add how you feel, and it keeps track of that stuff so you can look at back at it later, be like, this workout, this long ride felt extremely difficult this day, and this day it felt easy. What was the difference and that type of thing. So don't be ruled just by the data. Make sure that you understand that perceived rate of exertion as well. Number 6, your watch or sensor may die in a race, so better have a backup. I already mentioned that. Again, you go out there and do it in training, kind of feel how it feels. You get out there in a race, it's like, my heart rate, man, my watch is totally off. It says 200 beats a minute, and there's no way, because I feel good, feel like I'm in zone 2, feel like I can go pretty hard. So keep that in mind. Sensors may die on race day or something like that, and maybe you forgot to charge your watch up, or who knows what could happen. It could just fail on you. Make sure you have a backup, and RPE is a good backup for you. Number 7, can loosely relate the power and heart rate zones to RPE zones. So like I mentioned before, if I get an athlete or somebody even like bought a off-the-shelf plan for a race or something like that, and they're like, well, I don't have a power meter, I don't have a smart trainer, how do I correlate the structured workouts or your bike rides to my trainer indoors? I'm using a fluid trainer, I don't have power or anything. You could do it by, zone 5 on the power, just correlate that to zone 5, 1 from 5, 5 being all out, 4 being kind of that threshold, 3 being tempo effort, 2 being a zone 2 ride, and 1 being like you're sitting at a desk or something like that, not really doing much. So you can loosely relate power and heart rate zones if you have an understanding of RPE and kind of how it feels. It gives you a good way to correlate if you've got structured workouts or plans or something like that. You can back it down if you need to, if you don't have the tools and the sensors to do that. Number 8, may not get it right at first. So don't be frustrated. You do it for a week and you're like, it's just not making sense. This day felt easy and it should have been hard, and this day felt hard and should have been easy. Over time, give it a few weeks so you get an understanding of how your body's going to react, especially if you're going in the ups and downs of the cycle of your training plan. If you're at the end of a 3-week build, it's probably going to feel a little bit different than the first week of a build, or even transition week or something like that. So just get an understanding. It's like, okay, this is the top of my build. This is the 3rd week, 4th week, something like that. I know these kind of workouts are going to feel a little bit more difficult, but I've had an extra load, and it just adds up over time. So understand that that's going to affect your perceived rate of exertion. So give it a little bit of time. Don't expect after 2 or 3 days to be like, this is hogwash, RPEs for the birds. I'm going to go back to my power and my heart rate, and I'm just going to ignore how I feel, and we're just going to plow through these workouts. Don't do that. So that wraps up this quick little tip talking about the rate of perceived exertion, RPE. Hopefully gave you a little bit of information and brevity about how I use this data and information. If you got any questions, Facebook, YouTube, give it a comment there. I'll get back to you if I have any. I always see the comments and notifications, so I can go back and try to address any questions you might have in the review. If you're watching this on Facebook, you like it, give it a like. If you're watching on YouTube, give it a like, subscribe, hit the notification button to see future videos about this. And like I said, hit the comments on there as well. Maybe there's something I missed. Maybe there's something you want to add. Maybe you thought this was totally horrible. Give me a comment if you did give it a like, or if you want to give it a thumbs down or something like that on YouTube. Let me know why. Hopefully I can make it better for you. With that, we're going to wrap up this video. Hopefully it helped you out, and we'll see you in the next video.